In April of 1943, several hundred U.S. Navy women accepted for volunteer emergency service and were known as WAVES. They received duty assignments to the U.S. Naval Computing Lab at NCR in Dayton. The women assisted engineer Joseph Desch in a top-secret program to break Nazi Germany's Enigma code. With the septillions of possible combinations generated by the German Navy's four-rotor Enigma machine, Desch and his team of WAVES were tasked with a seemingly impossible mission to create a machine that could break the German code. This new machine, called a bombe, would need to sort through all the possible letter combinations quickly and efficiently. Under intense pressure and scrutiny from the government, successful testing of the new American bombe was achieved. On August 27, 1943, Desch's team sent the first shipment of decrypting machines to Washington, D.C., where they were put into operation at the U.S. Naval Communications Annex. By the fall of that same year, Dayton ingenuity had made it possible for the Allies to turn the tide in the Battle of the Atlantic. Next up is an important panel on developing future innovators for a digital workforce.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Trixie Brewer, and I'll be moderating the panel. Our panel is called Future Innovators for a Digital Workforce, and we're basically going to focus on the people and the skills required to ensure that we can actually make a digital environment work in our specific region. We'll address where we are, what are the things we are doing, some of the things maybe we could be doing to ensure that we're moving quickly to develop that new type of workforce and skill sets that we're going to need. Looking at the future workforce, the current workforce across the scale there. Our panel members today are Dr. Cassie Barlow, Ms. Samantha Aduccio, and online, of course, as usual, there's always some kind of glitch. So Mr. James Guido Crocker, and his flight was canceled, so he is on the screen today, but it's great that he can still participate and help us out today. With that, I'm going to turn it over and let each individual provide a little bit of information and knowledge and background about themselves and some of the things that they're working on today. Ms. Barlow, would you like to go first?
Absolutely. Thank you for sticking with us today and joining us. Cassie Barlow, I am the president of the Strategic Ohio Council for Higher Education. We're a nonprofit in the region that is a consortium of universities across Ohio. We have 23 different universities that are our members, and we are focused specifically on workforce development of students. And we employ interns in work-based learning opportunities across the region, hundreds of interns at a time, and we attract about 2,000 interns a year. And it's really kind of exciting to attract that many students because many of them come from out of state and want to work here in our region. And as you all know, we have a lot of really cool things going on in our region. My background is 26 years in the Air Force. I'm an industrial organizational psychologist by trade, so workforce development is my sweet spot. And happy to be here today with you all and to discuss the next generation with you.
Oh, thank you so much. Samantha, would you like to provide some information?
Of course, yeah. Samantha Aduccio, so I'm the Chief Technology Officer for NASIC, National Air and Space Intelligence Center. A little bit NASIC, just so those that are unaware, NASIC really does predictive analysis for foreign threats, really, for policymakers, acquisition, warfighters, varying degrees. And so I am in the process of setting that direction for where we are on our first initial modernization steps, but then those things that are going to take us into the future to move faster, be more agile, feed acquisition at a rate that they can actually impact the warfighter in a positive way. And I'm excited about the panel because I think, those are what Dr. Barlow kind of talked about were those places where we can really get the synergies that we need to grow people forward, not put them in a place and think they're gonna stay there forever, and find those opportunities. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Guido, would you like to give some background and knowledge on the types of things that you're working on?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me to this virtual venue. My apologies for not being here. So I am a longtime cyber airman. Wore the uniform for 21 years as a cyber airman through multiple different environments. Most of it was Intel, about 18 and a half years with NSA and FBI, DEA, Air Intel, EWO, information warfare, all the fun stuff that we can't talk about. But even before that, I worked for IBM and had a long time in Samsung and all this other companies. So I kind of have a foot in both worlds. And I'm also the founder and CTO for Bespin, as well as the founder for Digital University, in order to enable our men and women, whether you're soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, Guardian, to be able to enable themselves at a higher operational level based off of their mission and everything within the Digital University platform.
Oh, great. So we're going to start off with a few questions that we've already been given, and then please feel free. I got the iPad up here, so if there's any additional questions, please make sure you submit those, and we'll continue to go as long as the time allows. So the first question I have is, what are the biggest challenges you have come across in developing future innovators for the digital workforce? Samantha, would you like to answer that first?
Sure. I think somebody, I can't remember who the speaker was yesterday, but they kind of said the same thing. The Air Force culture is a culture of risk avoidance, right? But when we talk about the future of what we want to do with our weapon systems and our iteration and our ability to say, I'm going to be okay it's okay to make a mistake and we're going to recover from it and fail fast, fail forward. I think we have places where we have been very successful with that and learned from it and actually grew from it. And those are the places where I think we have our biggest challenges, and it's in the mindset of the traditional workforce that fears that I'm going to make a mistake and never recover from it. But the modern workforce, the students, as they come forward, they're much more conditioned to an environment where they're going to iterate quickly. They're going to communicate with customers. They're going to understand what the customer needs. They're going to gather those things quickly and then iterate on them and then pass those things forward slowly in small pieces, knowing that if I fail on this one piece, the airplane will not fall out of the sky. And so those are the places where I feel like we have the biggest challenges are that our risk avoidance and honestly the difference between, and I feel like it's a gap. I don't know if gap's the right term for it, but from the traditional workforce and then the new workforce in relation to that.
Oh, great. Guido, would you like to add to that or provide any additional information from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the biggest challenges that we have with workforce and innovation is that we don't move at the speed of industry. The speed of need often passes us up, and we're always trying to play catch up. And I think this is because of a few key things. So first of all, we're driven by industry, which we should be following suit with our workforce enablement. But most of our education system across the entire DoD is based off of kind of a temporal construct, meaning that, hey, what does it take for me to sit in the seat? Hey, I just need to know that bare minimum. And so they look at it as like if you look at a Venn diagram, you have the temporal piece of what is those steps just for me to sit here. But then we often lose sight of the operational knowledge of what that seat has to do. So if I'm, say, a developer and I'm working in an environment and I see IT changing rapidly with industry and everything, that seat, the way they see things in that command structure just sees, okay, you're a developer, you just do developer things. But no, there's a business case to what that developer does. And that operational construct kind of gets forgotten about. Now, this is okay for things that don't change very rapidly, like, airframes and things that, have a very long cycle, but IT and innovation change, weekly. And so we need to be able to rapidly adjust to those. So we need to partner more with industry, and we have to have a more flexible workforce structure.
government perspective, but across the board from just an employer perspective. So first and foremost, students need to know what is available to them and what the opportunities are. And I don't think we're quite there yet from that perspective, is to ensure that students know at a very young age what is within the realm of the possible from a digital infrastructure. And that's starting at a very young age, starting at the middle school level, and really helping students understand what's possible for them. And I've seen some employers be successful in that, in partnering with K through 12 schools, as well as colleges and universities, and building those relationships to be able to build the pathways that they require for their organizations. So I think it's important to look at it from both sides of the equation, not just from the employer perspective, but also from the student perspective, and to be able to do it together. There's great organizations, FCA being one of them, that brings employers together and brings organizations together to be able to work together to engage with schools. And then we also have another organization in our region. You're all familiar with Technology First, I'm sure. Same sort of thing there, to be able to work together so that we're defining the requirements together. What actually is required of students? What do they need? What courses do they need to take? What technical skills are important? And what soft skills are important? And I think one of the biggest challenges right now is making those connections, getting those connections. I'll tell you that the students are excited about what's out there and what's available, and we just need to be able to make those connections.
Oh, great, thank you. And I love the fact that you're looking at it from a student perspective. That's very different. I don't think we've probably thought about that. Next question. What is your organizations or the areas that you work in doing to attract, keep innovative talent with the knowledge and expertise that we would need to actually operate in a digital environment? With that, Cassie, would you like to go first?
Absolutely. So we've got a lot going on. And I would say first and foremost, we're trying to give students real world experiences so that they can understand, from a very basic level, what's within the realm of the possible for them. So specifically working with employers to help students get those experiences. And also working with employers to help them understand what students can do. Because some students don't, or some employers don't recognize that students can work within their company, and that they can build their next generation of workforce using students. So we work very closely with employers to do that. That's key. And as I mentioned, employers or organizations like FCA and like Technology First pulled together employers to be able to work on these types of things together. So it's not just, not just one organization, it's everyone working together. Something else we're doing is we put together a webinar series specifically focused in information technology. And we did that focused on students and also focused on instructors, on teachers, so that instructors could watch the webinar series and understand what was within the realm of the possible for students. And then students could also watch and see people like you who work in information technology every single day talk about what they do and talk about the skill sets required to work within that industry. And that's been a big hit with students, to be able to watch that webinar series, and we make that available to students to be able to see what's across information technology, what are all of the different options for them.
Oh, great. Samantha, what's your thoughts on that? Do you have anything to add?
I do, but from, again, a different perspective, pretty distant as well, I think, in some ways. So NASIC being an Intel organization, it's comes with its challenges, right? So where we talk about the capabilities to talk about all the things that we do, there's, they talk about NASIC branding, like trying to figure out what's NASIC's brand that you can actually sell, so to speak, to a student to help them understand the type of work that we do. Also, taking architecture and building low and pushing high so that we can actually start students doing code, understanding what the mission does, what the data looks like, the kind of work that we do, so that we can actually utilize those workforces and grow them forward, which we haven't really been able to do in the past because we were always, we're going to be behind these walls and it's a big gray building and it literally has no windows. But to open that up, the aperture up, so that they can actually take a little peek inside and understand some of the things that we do, it's a challenge, but how do we attract them, right? We need a brand, NASIC. We struggle with, the government struggles with, how do we pay them what everyone else on the outside pays? And that's a retention problem too. And a lot of that comes from your allegiance. A lot of the reason why, like, the industry sits in the room today, right? You're here because we want to make sure our country is strong. And so we grow that in the individuals that we bring into our positions. General Morris, I think, said this morning, he said, the benefits of telework and what that provides to the employees and our ability to actually well-round our staff, be able to recruit from not just within Dayton, but potentially pull in some of those capabilities from, and actually allow us to do more collaboration, like with Hill Air Force Base, for instance. They do a ton of software development. It'd be great to be able to collaborate closer with those and thinking out of the box for where we are today to enable ourselves to grow our force and actually grow our force in strength to understanding what everybody's doing is going to help us across the board. So those are the things we're doing. It is a challenge, though. It's like, how do you balance when you can go make more money and work at your house? Don't you love me? You want to come see me every day, don't you? It's so great, right? So.
Oh, that's great. Guido, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, considering you've got the digital university.
Yeah, so this one is really kind of different for us, but a lot of things that Samantha said really echo because we have so many airmen. So we're second largest software factory. We've got about 340-ish people. About half of that is military. We have these young airmen that are very, very talented, and we have airmen that are leading past our contractors as far as enablement. And there's some of them have left and made $500,000 in Amazon and Facebook and such. So that retention piece is very, very hard for us. Now, what I will say is, kind of what the previous two speakers have said is that the job satisfaction in the mission enablement is like the #1 reward. Because if you're just out there kind of going through the paces and getting paid whatever, it's not very meaningful, and this will endure past those dollars that are will become superficial after a while. So first, job satisfaction is top priority. We also work with a lot of different talent pools. So we have PACs. We work with our CFMs, our career field managers, across multiple different AFSCs to get people in. We also work with there's an Airman Coders program in the Air Force, so DAF, both Space Force and Air Force. And we work for placement of those members as they go through the program into innovation organizations like Kessel Run and Bespin. So there's a lot of opportunities for us to move around. But first and foremost, we pair on everything with industry. So we have a paired programming methodology, whether you're doing PM work, whether you're doing dev work, whether you're doing cloud enablement or whatever, it's paired across the entire thing so that we could rapidly onboard people and they understand how industry works a lot better.
Oh, that sounds great. Next question that I have here is that, and again, I'm going to refer to General Morris had a great discussion this morning, I thought, and he brought up, that at least from the Air Force perspective, we obviously are working with AFID, DAU, and of course the Digital University. But what I'd like to hear from all of you is what are some of the other things you guys are aware of within your organizations and also within the government, since you've all been associated with it, that will ensure the smooth transition to that digital environment and the skill sets required to work inside that digital environment, and what types of training education is available for the current workforce to navigate this transition. Guido, you want to go first since you've got the digital university? I think that would be quite interesting to hear your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So once again, as a very large software factory, we get a lot of brand new airmen out of tech school. Actually, we're very close to the Keesler Schoolhouse, so we get a lot of them. And we have to take them from that, like I said earlier, that temporal construct of what they learn how to do just as the meeting the bare standards into a full operational construct. So we started a booster flight, which rapidly takes them through the different sections of Bespin. We have 5 modular sections that are all broken up from the DevSecOps reference architecture, and they're able to understand those pieces. And then they go into a capstone, and then they have follow-on continuation training that is all built from the Digital University Consortium, which comes from various vendors. So we've got like, your Apples and Googles and all those largest of the world, as well as academia like Notre Dame and University of Southern California and University of Maryland. That all kind of comes out to an operational ready airman within there. So it's a culmination of things that really drive that.
Great. Cassie, would you like to add to that from your perspective?
Sure. Once again, a little bit of a different perspective, looking outside of the, the government. If you think about, I'm sure there's several folks today that are aware of the Ohio Cyber Range and what has been built by University of Cincinnati and multiple universities and colleges across the state, looking at building specific curriculum focused on training cyber skills. Once again, mostly the specific technical skills, but also soft skills as well. So our specific organization has a regional program organization that focuses on building that next generation with our colleges and universities. We also have organizations through our Tech Cred organization for Ohio and through the Ohio Department of Higher Ed and the Ohio Department of Education. So lots of great outside of the skill set or outside of the organization, working on what's next. That is at our colleges and universities, at our high schools, and our tech schools as well.
Oh, great. Samantha.
Yeah, I think the only piece I would add is that part about the traditional workforce again, and how do we transition them into a new world? Even if we talk about, COVID happened, and how do you manage your staff remotely? Like, that's a skill. It's not something you just do. We talk a lot about agile, which is it's good. I'm an agile believer, but it's hard to take every program, every system, and stuff it into an agile bucket, right? It doesn't always work out. And understanding how you would utilize it and training them in that way, but utilizing DAU and AFIT to help train our existing workforce, but also back to kind of the previous question a little bit, which was how do we make time, prioritize time for that training, which is really easy to come to work. And you're plowing through, right? And you've worked your however many hours, and you need dedicated time for developing, putting your staff on a 4-to-1. You're going to work, 4 days. You're going to take a day every week or a day every other week. My team's on a day every other week, where it's dedicated time that you're going to figure out what you need to train on that you're not comfortable with, or we can talk about what that looks like. But dedicate that time to actually learning how to live in the new world, so to speak, or just learn something new. I have young individuals, I say like they're 5 or something, they're not, on my team but they still need to hone their skills in cloud, and they still need to hone their skills in how am I developing something? What's my new workspace gonna look like? And they still need time to do those things. So that was the piece I think I would add. Otherwise, I agree with everything, and I am jealous of the doctor.
That's great, though, that you have one day every 2 weeks to allow your folks to train in areas, because you're exactly right. I mean, there's a lot on everybody's plate, and people come in and they're trying to do the best they can to get everything done, and there's very little time to do some of that additional work that needs to be done. That's incredible. Next question that we have that I'd like to walk through here is what types of skill sets are being developed and targeted to attract, recruit, and retain the talent for this new digital environment? And a second piece to that I'd like to add, I mean, there's a lot of discussion on this earlier today, and I thought it was excellent. We're talking about a lot of STEM type of skill sets that we need, and these are in short supply and high demand. So how do we work together from an industry government perspective, bringing in universities, our high schools, our tech schools, all the different things that's out there to ensure that we're bringing in, that we're training up these skills, and we're being able to have the types of skills and the number of skills that we need across the entire region that we have, and even bigger if you want to look across the DoD and them, including our industry partners in that. We're all very short on specific skill sets, so I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Samantha, would you like to go first?
I can start. So when we look at where NASIC is going, leaning forward on the IT side, it is all, cloud-based, cloud computing, looking for industry partners as well as universities to kind of help us grow a good base there. We talk a lot about AI ML. I feel like those are four-letter words in a lot of cases, because we don't put construct behind what that means when we say, well, we need people that are AI specialists. Like, what does that mean? And I think that's where we need to start partnering, I think, with schools a little closer to say, what does that mean in curriculum? And how does your curriculum, I guess Dr. Barlow brought that up earlier, align to us moving forward, but then also are kind of putting us on a training track in some ways. We haven't focused, internal to NASIC anyway, really well on UX design and what that looks like to the customer, and starting to do that customer analysis a little better. Instead, we tend to just build a different thing for a different person, as opposed to saying, what do the customers need? And is that all of them? Did I miss some? Is there another angle, so that when I'm solving that problem, it solves all those. When we talk about, like, we look for UX designers, UX specialists, but you can bring those in, but if you don't have those other pieces, the agile pieces and the, to actually start understanding the problem set for the customer and understanding what the product market fit kind of looks like for what you're building, those things don't work. We are DevSec pipelining, and so those are things that we're bringing in, and I think some of the challenges in relation to that, kind of putting a couple of questions together, is making sure that when we bring students in, that the tools are available to them, and not bringing them in and expecting them to operate on tools from 1990 or 2000, because that doesn't keep them. We talk about retention, it doesn't retain them, because then they're, in a lot of cases, frustrated. We don't want them to be frustrated. We want to use their energy to help propel us forward.
Guido, would you like to add on and provide your perspective as well?
Yeah, so this one is very difficult because we the government moves so slow from a manpower perspective. But the way Bespin does it is we've actually taken the DevSecOps architecture and broken it up to logical kind of modular chunks, and they get to work in that construct and kind of elevate and move around through that. And so they're able to understand all of the facets of that, with a very, very heavy focus on UX. And we have a whole design studio, and that enables them to understand and gain empathy for each one of those sections and what it means. Like, what does it mean to build cloud infrastructure? What does it mean to, build a DevSecOps pipeline, all these different pieces? This one's like really hard because I struggle with how we're structured as as the DoD is, and how, you know, how industry moves so fast. I really think that in order to attract those people, like Samantha said, we really have to focus on our tech, because if we're promising them something, whether they see the Air Force commercial, they're coming in and they're not getting that experience. We've had programmers say, "Oh, I saw that, you know, I joined the Air Force because it was so amazing. There was lasers in the commercial," and they come and I'm like, "I'm on COBOL. Like, why am I being a COBOL developer?" So we really owe it to our airmen, big A, whether it's civilian, you know, whatever, officer, enlisted, to be able to operate and practice in the most like high-paced tech that we possibly can, so they can have operational impact.
Great, thank you. Cassie, how about you?
Yeah, I really think, you know, from an organizational, a psychologist, an organizational psychologist, I encourage the Air Force and employers to think a little bit differently than we used to think about attraction and retention. So when I have the opportunity to talk with employers, I talk specifically about take a look at your job descriptions, and what should be different today compared to even a few years ago, about what skill sets you're looking for and how do you attract your next generation. What are the things that students are looking for now? I mean, you know, the elephant in the room is clearly remote. You know, how do we encourage students to work for employers and have remote options? What about professional development options? And I know the Air Force is really good about this, and some employers are really good about this as well, and give students the opportunity to get special certifications and get advanced degrees. So I think that we just need to think a little bit differently than we used to think when it comes to attraction and retention, and encouraging employees to the table, getting them to the table and getting them to stay with us and increase their skill sets, both from the technical side and the soft side as well.
Great. Next question I have is, what partnerships are you aware of in our region with local high schools, community colleges, tech schools, universities to assist with training of current employees, as well as ensure a workforce that meets the future? My guess is several of you have some good information here. Cassie, would you like to go first?
Yeah, a lot of great opportunities for students and employers. So, you know, as I mentioned already, the Tech Cred program, where businesses can utilize apprenticeship programs to train their next generation. We also have College Credit Plus in Ohio, where students can graduate from high school with, you know, an associate's degree, which is amazing. And different certifications as well. We also have fantastic articulation agreements across our region and across our state. So students at the two-year college can work towards enrollment in articulation at the four-year college to be able to get specific certifications and degree programming as well. And then, of course, I'll mention it again. I'll mention our, you know, FCA and Tech First, who work very closely on workforce development together to be able to train that next generation and encourage that next generation to join our different employers across the region. So a lot of wonderful things going on, and I encourage employers to jump in and try those different programs.
Samantha, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, I will. So internal to NASIC, I'm going to be a little selfish. So we have, and I'm saying being selfish in the sense of, like, we have requirements for classification. You know, you have to have a clearance in order to actually do some of the things that we do. And in order to kind of start them down that path, we've had programs where we've worked with UDIT, UDRI and Wright State to put what they have a program, right, where the students go to school 2 years, they take a semester off or a year off. So they end up going to school for 5 years, depending on their CCP stuff, although that can make a huge difference. But they can come and work on a contract for the government for a year. That does a couple things, right? That gives them an idea of the things that we do inside the gray walls. But also, is it something they enjoy? Is it something they want to do? Then we can start submitting them for clearances and things like that gets them ahead if that's what they want to do when they graduate. So we've done that there. We've partnered with the STEM schools on things that we can't technically do inside our building today, some of the AI, augmented reality sorts of things, VRs, so that we could test those out external to the building before we invest time in trying to get it inside the building. We have shielding issues, as you can imagine. We are trying to start relationships with like Central State University, and I would love to look at like Wittenberg, some of those private colleges, to see where can we help invest in them to grow their STEM, because those STEM percentages are so small, and encourage it so they can. I think we talked about that before we walked in here, sneak peek to our previous conversation. But we talked about the fact that, helping them get an idea of what we do, and understanding that you can come and do one job, especially, or we were talking about that, especially at Wright Pat, right? You can come into NASIC and you can start inside of missile analysis or something, right? Looking at that data. But if that's not interesting to you, you can go, there are 17 squadrons to pick from. You can go to another job. Or if you'd rather do education, you can go to AFIT. Or if you want to do some research, you can go to AFRL. Or if you want to do life cycle management things, and those are intriguing things to you. Or supply management. Or there are so many places just at Wright-Patterson that you don't have to feel like I'm stuck in a hole. And I think that's important that we kind of open that aperture up to them as well. And I think that's one of those appealing factors, so.
Definitely. Guido, what's your perspective on that?
So the local, for us, local is very, very vast. We have people in multiple time zones across the US, so it's not really limited to one. Of course, we have strong internships both within Digital University and external. And what I mean by that is that there's a full comprehensive learner's record that goes within Digital University, that as you go through the different courses and programs, there's a gamification score that corresponds to you as you do more assessments, as you elevate. The career field managers and other people, owners of these innovative organizations like Kessel Run and MIT Accelerator, get to see those. And so it's more of a talent workforce management for them. So they get to understand who has what capabilities and move them about the system. But in addition, the external to the DU construct is that we have PACs. So we have a ton of PACs that we work through, and we work a lot of job placements as well as local colleges. And then we work very closely with all the other software factories. As you know, we have a ton of software factories in the Air Force. No shortage of opportunities there, but we have a strong network, and there's actually a group that we share between each other. So if you're like, hey, I'm in this working business systems, I really want to go try some command and control. How can I get to that organization? We're able to essentially work with them, and then there's more educational opportunities within there. And as I said, we work closely with other DoD organizations. There's NSA programs that we've worked with to get people placed there. It's a 3-year program. You go through a lot of different enablement. And then the MIT Accelerator, who we work very closely with. And then this is both Air Force and OSD level. So there's a multitude of essentially the partnerships, both local and across the entire US.
Oh, great. And I think we've got lots of different partnerships we're working already, but obviously we can constantly look at better ways and different organizations we should be working with. The next question I have here is, how do we make our region, the Dayton area, a center of excellence in building future innovators for the digital workforce? So what kind of things can we do in this area to continue to build those capabilities that we need and those skill sets? And I think you guys have already hit on some of these, but I think that would be a good question. If you wouldn't mind starting off, Guido.
So as I'm not in the Dayton area, it's no different than, where I'm at close to, we were right outside of Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama. it really is about bringing in the opportunities and bringing in the environment that people want to live. And so they have to want the mission, and they have to be able to do that in order to get that center of excellence. So it's being very diverse. It's being staying ahead of the tech or along with the tech, and having that kind of enablement for people to want to stay. It's being able to adjust to all of the changing environments. It's also being able to address a wider, I guess, gamut of all the different areas of what our operational impacts are across. We have, across all functional areas. But how do we broaden that and then become the best in those areas by constant refinement? So there's really a lot that goes in there. Now, we've even tried to take this to the next level of working with investors. There's a few companies, I can't say their name, but how do I not only build a center of excellence and build that kind of tech area within a block, but the investors come in addition to that and say, how do we make those after hours capabilities, whether it's a nightclub or a coffee shop or one of the things that's going to draw the tech in. You really have to have it can't be just about the mission itself. It has to have the after hours and schooling and all those other pieces. But we've tried to address this at several different levels, and it's actually working quite well. And I'm surprised because Montgomery is also known as the destination spot, like Florida or something. But it's really no different from Dayton to Montgomery to Colorado. It's all the same.
Great, that's good information, and I think that sounds wonderful that you're actually getting investors. I think that's excellent to start to look at that from a different perspective. Especially we in the Air Force don't really look at getting investors to help with skills and those types of things. So that's incredible. Cassie, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, from my perspective, it's really all about collective impact and how we work together to ensure that students are exposed to opportunities within information technology, within cyber. And there's a lot of ways of doing that. I mean, one is through the amazing pathways that have been built by the Ohio Department of Education. And I would also say through work-based learning, getting students the opportunity to get into businesses and try it out. There's apprenticeship opportunities as well. There's also after-school activities. We have some pretty strong programming in our region, through Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, and the Cyber Patriot program is another example. Air Camp, after-school programming that gives students, in addition to work in the classroom, this is outside the classroom and after school, so that we can best prepare students for in-demand industries, because information technology and cyber are clearly one of our biggest in-demand industries in our region. So, giving students exposure from a very young age, all the way up through college and graduate student level, that's what our focus should be. And doing that together, I think, is the best option to get to the point of being a national center of excellence.
Great input. How about you, Samantha?
I think the only item I would add, because I agree with all of those things, although I wouldn't have thought to do what they're doing down towards Maxwell, it's a good idea, is I look to the industry, right? The industry partners to help us learn and help us grow. Today we use them internal to the building to kind of, I call it a sliding window, right? So they come in, they help us with design, implementation of capabilities, they train, pass that on, and then kind of come back to the beginning and help us through that process again. And having them partner with us as well, to be able to both communicate what we do, how we do it, what direction we're on, the sorts of things that we do. Those are places where I feel like we could really win. And I agree with collaboration, because I don't feel like we do that super well on base between AFRL, AFIT, AFMC, NASIC. We're all doing many of the same things. And we talk about not building tools twice and sharing what we do. And those are places where we could definitely do that better.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay. Next question. On a scale of 1 to 10, where do you believe your organization, and if you're part of the Air Force or the DoD, are in terms of developing an innovative digital workforce for the future? And how long do you believe it will take to ensure that we have an innovative digital workforce in the Air Force and in our region, and also in your region as well? When I talk Air Force, you guys are a major piece of that, and DoD as well, Guido. So you want to start that off, Guido?
Absolutely. So, as you know, I'm not local to the Dayton area, but where I think Bespin is as a software factory, I think we're solidly probably around the 7. I think others would rate us higher, but we're always very hard on ourselves because we see all of the different nitnoid pieces. I kind of want to, address this as I think we, the DoD, need to kind of change the focus on how we build the innovative digital workforce. I think we need to abandon some of the more brick and mortar constructs, the same way that industry has done for, gosh, I think it's 8 years now that they stopped looking at, hey, what is your 4-year degree? What is that? And they're focusing on, hey, what is your actual capabilities? What can you actually do when it comes down to it? Because there's so many bright minds that are learning how to be, software developers and hackers and cloud engineers before they even graduate high school. So we need to take advantage of that young, like very, very creative mind that is going above and beyond and devoting hours and hours and hours and understands the operational construct of what they're doing, and not just something that is, the book teachings and the kind of the normal pieces. So I think we, the DoD, need to change how we validate our workforce for hiring and then usher them through the process. Is Cyber 200 important? Yes, but is it really as important as something that's going to positively affect the business case of your organization? So if I can train you on something that gives you capabilities and not just gives you something that checks the box and only helps you about 10%, I want to focus on the thing that has the greater impact on business. I think there's a lot that we need to do within the DoD to kind of change that construct and validate the capability so that we can stay abreast of technology.
Oh, that's great. I totally agree with that concept. So very interesting. Cassie, what's your perspective on that?
I think one of the things that we do very well as an organization and SOCI is provide those work-based learning opportunities within different businesses across the region. And we're continuing to expand those opportunities, as I mentioned before, high school students all the way up to postdoctoral level students. We still have a lot of work to do. I would argue, it's been mentioned multiple times that the technology and the industry is changing extremely quickly, and ensuring that our educational institutions are keeping up, and specifically with those technological skill sets is really important. And that's really where we need to continue to work hard and work hard together to make sure that students are getting the skill sets they need.
Great. How about you, Samantha?
I totally agree. And I was talking to someone today about, when we look at the DevSecOps loop, it's infinite for a reason, right? And getting ourselves into that mindset of technology is constantly changing, and to embrace that. I have NASIC on it. Every 2 years, we're going to do an AOA on what does our platform look like? What are those technologies? And that scares people today. But, in 4 years, it's not going to, because it's a thing. We just need to embrace the fact. I'm not saying we're going to change. I'm not advocating change every year. I'm advocating for make sure we understand what's happening, and has our business use case and our customer base requirements changed that would require it to be tweaked and changed from our previous. And so understanding and accepting that change is an infinite loop, and we shouldn't fear it so much. And humans, I admit, I don't, I get an operating system change and I'm like, oh man, where did the search bar go again? They did that in Outlook just last week. And so little things are the things that are hard for people to adjust to. But getting to the point where we are constantly realizing that there's an infinite loop to that, and just ride the wave, so to speak.
Oh, great. So some of the questions from the audience, I'm going to start going through some of those. There's some really good ones here. Given the government's historic difficulty with transitioning innovative ideas to sustainable capabilities, how do you maintain motivation to innovate? Cassie, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think for government scientists, it's all about what are the opportunities, and giving government scientists and engineers the opportunities to innovate, and trying to incentivize them to innovate through different programs that the government has instituted. So, for instance, allowing the government scientists and engineers to step away from the government for a little while and to give it a try, to give innovation a try, and give them the opportunity to try something different. I think those incentives are really important, and we need to be able to offer a little bit more incentive to government scientists and engineers.
Thank you. Samantha?
I'm going to touch the sustainment side of that, because I think that's the part where they're like, so if I which we end up, this happens everywhere, right? So I'm not telling any secrets. So somebody will develop something and they'll stick it on their workstation and they'll be like, okay, so let's not reboot that, because if we reboot it, it's not going to run anymore. And then my algorithm will stop running. Instead of like, I'm going to figure out how we transition that to sustainment, because the sustainment team is like, no, I'm not used to that yet. And you need to give me like my 12 steps of, I don't even know. And so those are the places where we're trying to like, let's answer that question. How do we actually put that into a CI/CD pipeline, continuous development, continuous integration, so that actually can be live, and enable them with tools, but also, which we're not great at today, if it is a tool that has not been CTO'd, ATO'd into the ground, we're saying, well, you have to buy it, pray it's going to get ATO'd, CTO'd, and then we'll think about supporting it, getting them in an environment, which we can do, to do testing and say, is this the tool that I want? Is it not the tool that I want? Let some of that preliminary work happen, because we forget, like, it's a 3-letter, 4-letter word to me too, right? Because it feels like they're going to just slam the door in my face and say, no, I'm not going to support that. But at least think about what the customer needs, and then we can do the risk assessment to say, should we sustain it? Should we not sustain it? How can we get to a yes in that conversation? So.
Oh, great.
That's my part of the addition.
All right.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate your panel presentation today.
All right. Thank you.
Hooked.
Yeah.
Gong.